Welcome back to the series. Here we walk through the CyberEyes Tickets app built with Next.js, Supabase backend, GoHighLevel CRM API, and ShadCN UI. Let's go to the application architecture diagram. All right, so we are back at this diagram as we have seen this in our first video. So in this video, we're just going to cover this part where GHL Cloud, an order is generated, and here a webhook is invoked, and via the Next.js endpoint, we insert the data into our Supabase database and do a whole bunch of other things. So let's go to a better diagram. All right, so this is actually a much better representation of GHL Webhook Process that I'm about to explain. Through that one post request, we're going to be doing a heck of a lot of things, mainly three things. We're going to generate a QR code and then send that QR code data back to GHL via the API. And then at the same time, we will collect all the order information and insert them into our order table in Supabase. Don't worry, we're going to go step by step. So let's start right here, GHL automation and the webhook. All right, so what you're looking at here is one of the automations in GHL. So basically, as you can see, this is one of the brainstorming sessions, and I have to just admit that I am not an expert in GHL. A lot of things I have no idea what's happening. What I focus on is the output of this webhook and the APIs. So anyway, this is something I was working with our GHL admin. What they're doing here is submitting orders, successful orders, and connecting all those to this specific webhook. And when you click on this webhook, you will see that it is actually making a post request. And this is one of my URLs. As you can see, let's go to the end. See, this is a hook test, same API GHL hook test. And this is an ngrok URL because while we were doing this testing, my application was still running locally. So I had to use this ngrok tunnel to connect to GHL. Anyway, so this time I'm not going to be able to simulate this exact same thing because I have no idea, how this order is processed. But what I will do is simulate it using Postman. And this will be our current URL. That's where my Next.js server is running. And what I did do, I collected the data structure that GHL offers through that webhook, and I kept this whole thing so that I can do multiple testing and get my backend endpoint ready. So this is the whole order. So what I keep doing it is I keep changing some key factors like client name, order ID, contact ID, etc. And then I just hit send, and basically it's going to be exact simulation of that webhook because as you can see here, all it's doing is making a post request to a link and sending the data, right? So here we have the data, at least the data structure, and we have the actual URL where I'm running my server, and that's how we're going to test the whole thing. Now let's go back to the diagram. All right, so now we know how we got up to this point, right? So now, once the data gets here, so I have this helper method, data extraction.ts, going in there, parsing through that entire JSON and collecting these three pieces of data. Very crucial. Order ID, contact ID, and product ID. So initially, once we collect these, we just then immediately go to this helper function, generate QR code, and here we create an URL. As you can see, the application default /orders/order ID. With this URL, we're going to create a unique and very specific URL to our application and turn that into a QR code so that we can then send it back to GHL, to the client, and the client can use that to come to our admins and get their tickets validated. So let's go into a little bit more detail. All right, so we are back at the app. So let's go track down one of our orders. All right, here we go. All right, so this is one single order, right? Now let's look at the URL right here. The application URL, then /order/ the order ID. So this is that exact, very specific URL that the user needs to give it to our admin. So basically, they're not going to give it directly, but they're going to share that via a QR code that we actually send them via GHL. And that's the QR code we're going to be making in our Next.js backend. So what's going to happen is after scanning that QR code in, it will redirect our user, our admin, to this specific page. So now they can verify with some ticket information, let's say the name, email address, how much they paid, to verify that they are the purchaser of the ticket. And then depending on how many tickets they want to validate, they can just click here like this and validate this ticket, and do this, validate that ticket. If like all three of them show up, let's say for 3 people, they can just hit validate all, validate everything, right? So that's pretty much the whole process. Now let's go back to the diagram again. Okay, so now that we have our QR code generated, we're going to have to write that back to the GHL API, right? Now that's going to get a little bit tricky. We're going to have to do them through the custom fields. And once again, let's go back to the app. All right, so now, as you can see here, we have these things right there. There are drop downs, right? So this is where we are actually bringing in the custom fields from GHL API, right? And these are the custom fields that our admins are gonna be attaching to our products or events, right? So for example, right here, it has already been attached to whose custom field 2. For example, right here, let's say, actually, let me also show you. Okay, so let's say this one right here, custom field 1, right? So I'm just going to choose that and save custom field. Boom, there you go. So this field has been attached. Now, quickly, let's go check our database right here. So what we are doing is we have a table here, QR fields, and here we are attaching the events product ID, which is event ID, with our custom fields, with their custom field IDs. Everything, I mean, one specific thing with another specific thing, now they're attached. And I have the algo set up in such a way that you cannot use the same custom field with multiple events, because what's going to happen is if we keep sending the QR codes, let's say which belongs to 2 different events. I mean, 2 different events have a common custom field, and one guy purchases both event tickets. What's going to happen is one will replace the other. So the person buying it will receive only one QR code, not for the both events. So it is very important that we have unique custom fields attached to unique products, right? So to be a little bit more detailed, let's go to GHL. All right, so we are back at the API. So here we have to use 2 different APIs. One is contacts and the other one is custom field, right? So remember, in the front page, we have a list of custom fields via the drop down. This is how we're grabbing them, right? All custom fields. Let's bring them in. There you go. So this is how we can find the entire list of custom fields, and each of them has their own IDs, right? So when we attach them or create that table that I just showed you, this is where we collect the name and the ID from, and then make another call to get the product ID, and combining the two, we created that table, and that's where we also maintaining a status, active, inactive. So once a custom field is assigned to a product, it is inactive, and vice versa, right? But the question is how we're going to go ahead and attach them to our contacts or our customers. So let's look at here, GHL. These are our, this is a contact list. Basically, these are the customers who buys the event tickets, right? So if I look into one of them, so this is what it looks like, right? So I was just testing. So let's say custom field 2, custom field 1, and then edited by Moose, whatever. This is another custom field. So I was just testing the data by inserting them. For example, this is a huge QR code. This is what they look like once inserted. But from the GHL front end, they're gonna turn into nice little box image and send to the client via email, right? So here they look ugly. Anyway, so these are the custom fields that are attached to our contacts, right? So if we go here and look at our contacts, let's bring in all of them. There you go. All right, so if we keep going down, there you go. Here is the custom field. So remember, that URL I sent, this is the ID, and these other QR code, there are 2 of them, right? Right here. 2 key, Moose field 1 and 2 has 2 QR codes and 1 has a URL. So this is what they look like via the API. The ID and the value. ID and the value. So what's going to happen is on our Next.js side, since we have the unique custom field ID attached to our unique product ID or event ID, we're going to go ahead and write to this API, the contact API. We're going to do a put, send a put request like this, and we're going to send information just like that. Whatever value, this value we're going to be sending. This is just a practice session, but this is where we're going to send the entire QR code value. And with this ID, we're going to isolate it and know exactly where to put it. Going to go ahead and enter this data to our contact like this, making them look like this, so that our GHL admins can use these things to send email to our customer who just bought the tickets. And this is another reason that we need these fields to be unique for each product, so that when they scan the tickets, it will go to one specific product and this will go to the other specific product, right? All right, so that being said, let's go back to the diagram again. All right, so now that you have looked at the whole process, now you can easily tell what's happening here. Once the QR code is generated, we just use this specific function, update GHL field, where we make the call to the QR event field, that specific fields table. Using that product ID, we grab that custom field ID, and then in this program, we get the contact ID. Remember, it's coming from right here, and now the custom field ID, which I collected from the table using this product ID at the beginning, right? So now we have 2 of the necessary things handy so that we can make the API call. And what are we sending as value? Our QR code. Oh, there you go. We make a put request, and thus the QR code now belongs to that specific contact on the GHL front end. And from there, it gets emailed to the client, right? And now we have to be also ready with the order information. Otherwise, the client might just show up with QR code, but if they don't find the order, how are we going to validate? So that's why, we just use that same order ID. We make another API call in this through this route, this is my Next.js endpoint, and this is where we use the order ID, and through that order ID we make another API call, get all the order detail information, and then insert into our order table. And you're familiar with this order table from our previous video. If not, let's go see. All right, so this is our order table, and this is where we collect all the necessary information, contact information, etc. And most importantly, this is where we know which type of tickets, how many were purchased. And based on simply these numbers, we then generate another ticket data to insert into our tickets table right here, like that. Each single one, if it says 2 VIP, we generate 2 VIP. If it says 3 regular, we generate 3 regulars, and everything is attached to that specific ID. And these ticket IDs we create using UUID. And currently they're all in live status. Probably, okay, 2 of them that we just validated. And this is a simple table, and this is only created at, updated at. That's it. And one thing to notice that the ticket table is attached to our order table via the foreign key of order ID. So we cannot just delete an order willy-nilly because our order IDs are attached to our ticket IDs also. This is our schema of our ticket table, right? Anyway, we'll do a lot of back and forth with this. Don't worry. So let's go back. All right. So now that we know the whole process, let's go test it out. All right. So we are ready for testing. I just cleared out that all the database for the table for the custom field and product attachment. So everything is empty now. So anyone can be used with anyone, but we're going to target this one right here, Moose Event 1, and we're going to attach this keyword test, this field. But let's check out the GHL for a second. All right, so we're going to target Tin Man here, right? And see, this is where, once we're successful, this is where we should see the QR code. And this is our order list. Tin Man already put in. This is the $390 amount. And if we go look in the detail, there should be 1 VIP ticket and 2 regular tickets in there. Once again, $398 would be the total. And this should be his order ID. Now we're going going about it in a reverse fashion because the order is already placed. So we just have to simulate it via this one. Yeah, this QR post method into our Next.js endpoint right here, and this one is where all the Tin Man data is, this structure. So basically, we are going to be simulating the order webhook invocation, but I'm just targeting it like Moose Event 1 is our target event. Our target product is this guy right here. Once successful, we will see it into our portal, having 1 VIP ticket and 2 regular ticket, and totaling $398. And this is the guy, Tin Man, and this is where this is the custom field we're going to target to send him, our QR code, with the URL and everything. So let's go back. Okay, so also let's check first if Tin Man is available. Okay, so if successful, our the Tin Man order list should be right here. So let's go back. Let's attach our keyword test custom field with this product. Okay, and now let's go back to our table to make sure. All right, so keyword field, Moose Event 1 is the product ID, and this is the custom field ID, and the name is keyword test, right? So now let's go back to Postman. All right, so this is where we're going to keep an eye out and all the information in place. And this is our Next.js endpoint to receive the post request from the webhook by GHL. So we're just going to simulate it. Let's send the request. All right, look at that. Oh, how quick that was, right? QR code generated, and this is our URL with the order, and this is the QR code that was sent back to GHL, and in the end, message is successful, updated QR code. All right, so now let's check the refresh. There you go. The QR code is now present. Came right here in the GHL under Tin Man, and that's exactly what it was supposed to be doing. And now let's go back to our app and check for the order. All right, so we are back to our app. Moment of truth, this keyword test. One part is successful. We already know that because we have just verified that the QR code is present under Tin Man. But now let's click on the view order. And there you have it. Tin Man is right here. And let's check the details. Boom, there you go. Exactly 2 regular tickets, 1 VIP tickets. And we are right on the money. Our webhook recipient, the post request was totally successful from our Next.js side. So right now, time to go have a nice little code walkthrough that we've been waiting for. All right, so this is where we start. API GHL WP Webhook. Okay, finally we are at the code level. We are here API GHL Webhook QR and route.ts, right? So this is the overall description, and we are bringing in the necessary libraries, data extraction, the QR helper, and update GHL field. Initially, we just focus on the body, and this is the post request. This is where it receives the post request, and we snatch the entire data JSON and put it in webhook data, and then take that data, send it to extract webhook data, which is right here, extract webhook data, and then here we just grab our 3 important data points: contact ID, order ID, product ID. As we saw here, just three of these data points gets us everything, right? So that's exactly what this guy is doing. We're doing some error checking. If everything is good, then we're just returning contact ID, product ID, and order ID. Go back. Here also we're doing similar error checking. So once the data is in our bucket, we just move for step number 2, where we generate the QR code URL and image. So right here, we initially take that order ID and the application base URL from our .env file and create the whole URL as we saw before, where users should end up to get their tickets validated. Now we take that URL, pass it to generate QR code, and get the image done here. So let's go check out where this is coming from, right? Generate QR code. Let's go there. All right, so it's under util QR app helpers. A pretty simple function, but to get it to work, we are importing QR code library and the QR code object. So using that URL from the string, we just invoke QR code dot to data URL and send that text and generate the QR code image and return it. If error, we just generate these errors, right? So let's go back. Now that we are done with our step 1 and step 2, have our QR code URL and image. So let's move on to step 3, which is update GHL contact with generated QR code. So we just invoke this async function, update GHL field, and send this three set of data points. And let's go check this function right here. Just receive our arguments, and then we just first check query the Supabase table for the active field associated with the product ID, right? As we saw in our custom field table that has product ID and the custom fields. So we just check for the active IDs, right? So once we find our active ID, which means with an ID that is associated with the product. So once we get that, select that field ID from that table, and as we saw before in Postman, that this is the structure GHL API is expecting. So we just create our custom field payload object ID and value, and in the value we pass the keyword image and the ID as in field ID, right? So once we do that, now we make a fetch call to this contact URL API GHL contact /ID, and this is where we put the put request. So let's go quickly check what this is doing. GHL contact ID and the route, right? So here you can ignore this one. I just put a get request in there so that I can test the API path once I build them, just for testing and making sure that there is a path available. But this is our actual function. This accept this put request and get the ID, and we assign it to the contact ID, and we grab the custom fields from the field from the body, JSON body, and make sure they are available. If not, we throw an error. So with that data, we just create our payload, custom fields, and finally, now we make a fetch request directly to the GHL API contact /contact ID, as we saw in the Postman. So this is the contact ID we're using, put request, and we send the payload, which is basically the custom field ID and the value. So once that goes through successfully, we just send the success message. Otherwise, we just throw an error here, and here also we do some other error check, right? So this is how finally we finally update the contact with the custom field that has the keyword image attached to it. So once this is done, we reach at the final step 4 is asynchronously sync the order data to our order table using this API URL. And if this is successful, then we reply this data saying that it was successful. Otherwise, we catch the error. But we're gonna go discuss this URL path a little bit later, because a lot happening right here, right? So for now, we're just gonna go ahead and finish this whole thing. So after everything's said and done, if everything is successful, then step number 5, just simply collect all the necessary information so that we can send it to the screen as an output, making sure everything went okay. And finally, send this message saying QR code generated, GHL contact updated, and order sync triggered successfully. And we also display the URL, the QR code image, and the update result that we get back from our order upgrade screen, right? Otherwise, we just handle error message like this, right? So now, finally, let's check what this URL is doing, how we are updating the order, right? All right, so we are now at the GHL order ID and route. This is what we use to update our order table in Supabase, pulling the data from GHL. All right, so at the beginning, I'm just pulling in the create client from Supabase server util, and of course request and response. And these are my service functions that I create to organize my fetch requests. So fetch GHL order details, ticket type from JSON, and ticket type from types from API, right? So bringing all of them in, and initially we're just collecting the order ID as string and putting it in order ID and creating the Supabase client object. So as a step, and once these are ready, step one, we just fetch order details by using the order ID and putting them in this order details variable and calling the fetch GHL order detail, right? So let's go see where that is and what is it doing. So as mentioned before, under services, GHL service, we find fetch GHL order details and taking in order ID as a string, and I'm bringing in my GHL token from .env.local file, and this is where we're making a straight call to GHL API with the specific order ID and GHL token to grab the order detail. Response doesn't go right, throw an error, otherwise we return response.json. So let's go back. All right, so now we have our order details. Now this is a big boy. This is a very detailed JSON object that has all the necessary informations about that order that we need, right? So in case we're missing it, we throw a flag. Otherwise, we move forward. And now we're gonna go ahead and get ready for the ticket quantities. So I declare this variable, and we're gonna loop through all the items because if you get a chance to look at the order data object, you'll see that there's a item, and then under the product there should be IDs to be found, and then order details alt ID is basically the location ID. These are the stuff we're going to need to make the API call, and here we collect the ticket types of this specific order, right? So we call this function fetch ticket types from JSON, and we send the product ID. Now, why from JSON? Let me just quickly go there. Actually, let me just go like this. All right. This is another service function sitting in GHL services. What this does, as you can see, this is actually reading the data from a JSON file, which is under public folder and which name is ticket_type.json. So right here under public folder, ticket_type.json, if we go there, we see a structure already built. This has product ID, and under that, the ticket types that product ID has, the full list. Now, why this is here? I created that earlier so that I don't have to keep making API calls, right? As soon as the application starts, I launch another API call to create this, so that when the time comes, the webhook process starts, we don't have to make any more calls. We can just read straight from this JSON file, right? Now, how this is created, we'll get to that later. So now let's get back to the flow. So this is the fetch ticket types from JSON, and this gets this product ID and sends us, by looping through that file, it actually sends us the product type, the ticket types, right? So let's go back there. So now we have the ticket types available in this order. Now, this is another thing, like in case the file is missing or something, this is our fallback plan. So in case the ticket types.length equals 0, we just make a straight call to the API using product ID, location ID, and get the ticket types. Anyway, now that we have our ticket types, we just loop through it and create our ticket quantities object, where we have a nice structure where the type shows and the quantity, right? So in order to help you visualize this part, let's go to the database for a second. All right, so if you're looking at this, QR orders table, and here ticket quantities, this is the object we're creating. See, game tickets 5, VIP 2, VIP 1, regular 2, etc., right? This is the object we're creating by looping through that, where the ticket type and the quantity shows clearly, because we're going to need them in order for to create our tickets in our tickets table, right? Let's go back. So now we have the quantities, and at this point, from this order detail, we have all the necessary data we need, and this is where finally, we update our QR orders table, the one you just saw. All the necessary data we just insert or upsert, in case something was already there, it just augments the data. And now the order table update is done. So next step would be insert missing tickets to our QR tickets table. Now the missing word could be misguided at this point, because this is an extra check I'm putting in. I mean, this is optional. I'm just being overcautious here, because I am thinking while that this order gets generated and we're creating the tickets, there could be a slight chance that somebody already pushed a sync button, and the sync button went ahead and created those tickets anyway. So just to be cautious here, we just making a check, checking the tickets table according to this ID and ticket type that we just created right here. In case something is available, then we put it in the existing tickets, right? So using that in a existing ticket count, and then this existing ticket, then we created a new variable called existing count, and then if something exists, then we put that number in, otherwise we set it to 0, right? So that if let's say 2 tickets already there, we're not going to create them, we're just going to create the rest of them, right? We're being very surgical here, right? So here, let's say, since this is a brand new order, there might not be any tickets. So let's say, normally the value would be 0. So then we just go ahead and take the total quantity and loop through it and insert into our tickets table one by one with a live status, ticket type, and with a ticket ID. So this is how we got all our tickets back when we finally saw. Remember that that Tin Man order, and Tin Man order had every single tickets available. This is how, right? So finally, we finish our job creating the tickets, updating the database, and we send out this message saying synced successfully, otherwise we call an error. Finally, this is the way we sync our order details created by the webhook and sync up with our Supabase database order table, and finish the whole process. Now quickly, I'm just going to show you how those JSON file was created. Like for example, here I'm creating a ticket type, right? I showed you this before. We do it by adding them in the main under app folder, the main layout. This layout will always be accessed. If you want to access any page, this is where you come to begin with, right? So this is my main route file, and as you can see here, I have the body, the theme provider, main layout, and everything else that's necessary, right? It's a very simple one, but since this is also the file that will be always accessed, so this is where I put these two service functions. For example, this is the one creates that JSON file. So let's see what this one is doing and what this looks like. So this is a ticket service. This is another service function, and this is where I am actually making a call to the GHL Events API, collecting all the product IDs, and then I have another one which is called ticket types, where as a body we're sending the product IDs and location ID. So this guy actually also making a straight call to the API. Let's go find him. API GHL ticket types. API GHL, and where is it? Ticket types. Boom. There you go. So this guy right here, a post, the post request, getting this product ID's location ID, and if they're missing, raising a flag. Otherwise, this is calling another function, service function called generate ticket type.json using these. So let's see what this guy is doing. So this guy taking the ticket types and product ID and looping through those product IDs, is making another straight call to the API, getting the this is the using the prices API, and by calling that, it is collecting the prices according to the product ID and type. And this is how it's finally going ahead and returning to this file. And if we go there, and this file is finally writing to the JSON. So let's see once again, ticket types, where is it? Types route, right there. So finally, it is getting all the ticket types array and creating the JSON file path under public folder. This is the file name, and it's stringifying the data. It just received the array data, and finally fs.writeFileSync, it's finally writing that file. And this is how we're generating those JSON files from this layout file every time the application starts. But also I put in a revalidate 3600 here. So that means every 1 hour it refreshes itself. So in case there are new data available, every hour it's going to go ahead and make that call and refresh that data. And finally, we get to see our data like this. And thus, we use it every time without making a direct GHL API call from this JSON file. And that being said, we just walked through the entire GHL automation to webhook to Next.js API endpoint, all the way back to GHL contact API and data syncing to our order tables in Supabase.